Yo, team, Coach Chad back again. Now, it's been a while since I've had an update, and I am sorry for that. I have been out of province for a little bit and busy with a few things, not great excuses, but just a brief explanation. So I have a whole whack of questions here that I need to answer that you guys have asked, and I am going to provide our responses here. So I got about 11 questions that I need to go through here, and in no particular order. I'm going to jump around a little bit. I'm going to try and maybe hit some of the smaller ones first. So we got a couple bigger ones at the end. Okay, so let's get started off. Something we've actually covered before, but another question came in on, which was how much fiber should I be getting on a daily basis? Now, if you refer back to your nutritional document and your participant's guide, underneath the fiber section in food choices, it's going to lay out a basic goal that you should be getting 15 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories ingested, and at a minimum throughout the day for females of 25 grams and a minimum of 40 grams for males. Okay, so that is our baseline for fiber ingestion. But remember, most of the time when you're tracking foods in MyFitnessPal, or many times, fiber is not accurately indicated. So you have to make sure that when you're tracking your food in your food tracker, that all the foods you put in are actually recording fiber correctly, so that the number at the end of the day is accurate. Also, a general rule is if you're eating 80+% of your food from whole food sources, getting your vegetables in, your natural fruits, things like that, you don't have to worry about fiber. It's never going to be an issue for you if you're sticking to whole food varieties. Okay, so 15 grams per 1,000 calories, 25 grams minimum for females, 40 for males. Again, if you're eating whole food, you're good to go, my friends. Okay, next question was, I meet all of my macros, but I'm wondering if I'm hitting my micros correctly, because in MyFitnessPal it states I'm not. Now, this is a good question to piggyback off of the fiber question, because again, micronutrients are almost always not tracked in MyFitnessPal correctly. Okay, even with the blue check mark, they're not always up to date in there. And anytime I put my own foods in, I only put in protein, carbs, fats, and half the time I forget to put fiber in anyhow. So again, when you're using your foods in there, it won't track the micronutrients all that well. But if you are tracking them, again, this goes back to a question that we answered a few weeks ago, where from a micronutrient perspective, the numbers in MyFitnessPal are guides. If you have true concerns on these kinds of things, what you need to do is you need to talk to your doctor and get some blood work done, because depending on your age, your background, your sleeping, any kind of ailments you have, anything like that, and your digestion rate, you may or may not, need higher levels of certain vitamins, which then require you to have certain foods in your diets. That's outside of my scope of practice, and also not something that I can possibly answer. Okay. If I were to try and answer any of those kind of specific questions around certain levels of micronutrients, I would only be doing you a disservice, because it's not at all something that I would have access to or have any appropriate information on without blood work. So you need to talk to your doctor about such things. But going back to MyFitnessPal, remember, most foods in there are not going to track these correctly. But if you're eating a whole food diet, you honestly rarely ever have to worry about these things. And then you basically have two methods, if you will, of having maybe a security or kind of a insurance plan on this front. The first one is to have a multivitamin every day. So I actually do take a multivitamin every morning. Again, it's my insurance policy, whether it's accurate or not. There's no way I can tell. I have just accepted that $30 a month that I'm going to be putting towards that portion of my health, and I'm okay with that. The secondary one, and it's something I also do, is I have a greens supplement every single day. I probably don't eat as much vegetables as I should. And again, as an insurance policy, I just really enjoy having a greens shake or a greens drink. So I usually have one in the morning, and then about 50% of the time I have one at night, solely because I forget the other times. But the morning I have a routine where I have a scoop of greens in water, which is also when I take my creatine. So I just kind of lump those two together. It makes something easy for me, and it's part of my morning ritual. So I think that's probably the easiest way to answer that question with regard to micros, because it's something we really truly can't answer without more information. Okay. All right. Next question. Should I eat more calories on days after my workout? And the reason why this question was asked is the individual stated that they were fairly hungry on the days after they worked out. Now, this is a bit of a individual question, of course, and there'd be a little bit more nuance to this with a deeper discussion. But the basic answer is yes and no. So it depends. So let's start off with yes. You can modify your calories from day to day. And there's different ways that you can do this. So maybe on your workout days, you provide yourself more nutrients. And I would suspect that if you provided yourself more caloric load on workout days, you wouldn't have that hunger on the next day. So I wouldn't necessarily load the back end of that day. I would make sure to load the day that I'm actually working out. And then you have multiple methods as to how you can do that. You can just simply add more caloric load by maybe 250 calories per day on your workout days, or you can time it to be after your workouts, which is probably the better way to go. So maybe adding a little bit of carbohydrates post-workout can help with a little bit of uptick on muscle glycogen and liver glycogen storage, and carbohydrates in maybe the next meal after your post-workout shake if you have one. So those would be places that you could add that extra 250 calories. But then remember though, calories and the energy deficit that you're on still needs to be maintained across the week. So what that would mean is if you're going to add 250 calories on workout days, then you have to then subtract 250 calories from the non-workout days. Okay. Now, because at the end of the week, remember the average of the week is what is going to count and what's going to be important. So you got to make sure that you have that all accounted for. And yes, you absolutely can have high and low days in your nutrient load or your caloric load throughout the week, but they're going to have to be offset. So this is something that you would have to play with and monitor to see how you would manage it best. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that you can't take and add more calories to the next day, but I would argue that wouldn't be the best benefit or the best way of doing that, because it now won't necessarily aid or add to your recoverability from the workout that you did the day before. You still want to get those calories in within the first maybe 1 to 4 hours after working out, if that's what's causing your hunger problems. Okay. So I hope that answers the question with regard to how you can do that. One of the sections that's coming up with regard to the nutritional participants guide is the partitioning of calories throughout the week, because you can, as I said, it stated just a second ago, you can move those around throughout the day. So if you have a high calorie day one day, you drop off the next. If you have a low calorie day, you're welcome to bring the next one up. Now, if you want to time those around your workout, you're welcome to do that as well. If you want to time it around your weekend and your weekdays, you're also welcome to do that. There's a lot of ways that you can manipulate your daily and weekly caloric load, but at the end of the week, the average has to be correct to make sure you have that energy deficit, which is really the key component to your weight loss efforts throughout the Quantum Leap. Again, I hope that answers the question. If it doesn't, make the question or frame the question a little bit differently and ask it again, and we'll just dig a little bit deeper. Okay. Next question. Nuts and seeds. What are my thoughts on nuts and seeds due to the fact that they are high calorie and also but high nutrient? How would you recommend placing them into your diet? However you want. Okay. Now remember, if it's a high calorie food and it's a high fat food, which nuts and seeds primarily will be, then you just have to make sure that they're fitting into your daily plan. So one of the old breakfasts that I used to love, and mostly because my old mentor, Charles Poliquin, was huge on it, was for breakfast was the classic meat and nut breakfast. So every morning I would have red meat with a handful of nuts. And it was a very high fat meal and a high protein meal, very low carbohydrates, which is how Charles always liked to start the day. So this is one place that you could incorporate nuts and seeds into your diet, of course. Now, because they're high nutrient, they're an excellent food source for you guys on a weight loss plan or within the Quantum Leap. It doesn't matter as long as you can fit them within your caloric means, and also make sure that you're satiated in the day and that you're not dropping your foodstuffs too far back, being like total food volume, creating issues with hunger, then you're good to go, right? You're absolutely good to go. There's nothing wrong with it. Now, with regard to sources and types of nuts and seeds, that's your personal preference based on your palate, I suppose. It doesn't really matter which ones you're going to be choosing, because there's benefits to each. Go back to the fat section of your nutritional participants guide and look at the different food sources and see where that balance of fat types falls in, and maybe you can have certain choices of nuts that might make more of a blend of fatty acids that are in your diet, which then adds to that moderation or that healthy balance that we're constantly looking for. So again, it always comes back to energy balance. How does it fit into your diet? How does it fit into your natural palate and the things that you enjoy eating? Because these are, of course, whole food options that fit our goals. So I say go for it, man. Absolutely go for it. Have fun with it. Just make it fit. Now, the last thing I'll say on nuts and seeds is you just have to be incredibly careful with quantities. So this is one of those places you got to guarantee that you're measuring your food. So as an example, think about putting your butter on a piece of toast. It is very hard to quantify 1 tablespoon of butter. So what I would recommend you do is ensure that you have whatever nut source you're using, that it goes by grams. So that way, rather than saying a quarter cup or a third of a cup, which is sometimes hard to measure, which most nuts will be fairly easy, but use the weight measurement of it and get your scale out and measure the weight of your nuts every single morning. And that way, you know that you're within realm, but you'll also know what amount that is. So in case as an example, you might be actually coming down to like 12 almonds or 10 almonds. Then that way, you know, every morning you can just add 10 or 12 almonds together and you have the certain amount of grams. You might be off by 1 to 5 grams just based on the size of the almonds, but generally speaking, you're going to have an average around that. So that's probably the easiest way. If you're using mixed nuts, you're probably going to have to measure every single day. Okay. So I hope that helps with regard to that question. All right. Next question. Dealing with fear of watching the weight. Oh, how do I deal with fear while watching weight fluctuations on the scale? This is easy. Okay. I always visualize this on a chart. So you have the right side and the left side of the chart. On the left side, you have ignorance. On the right side, you have knowledge. Okay. Now, people always, when they hear the word ignorance, it sounds like a detrimental or kind of a demeaning term. And I don't mean it that way. What I mean by ignorance is I mean simply not knowing. Okay. Now, when you guys know this because we've discussed this briefly, with regard to fluctuations on the scale, this comes down to hydration level, sodium level, how much food stuff is in your system, how fast and what food did you eat last as to how long it stays in the system, and what's your digestive timeline look like. There's a lot of reasons why your weight might fluctuate up and down day to day, and it doesn't matter. Okay. So you first off have to understand it does not matter because you guys are tracking the weekly averages of your weight. Okay. So because you're doing an average of a week, you have a blend, you're putting it together. The day-to-day changes do not matter. Let me repeat that. The day-to-day changes do not matter. Just because your scale's up 1 to 5 or 1 to 2 pounds, whatever it might be, does not mean that you have extra fat mass. That might just simply mean that you have food in your digestive tract, that you're holding a little bit of water due to a high sodium meal that you had the night before. Okay. But over time, that will average out. All right. So when it comes to that understanding of ignorance and knowledge, how you get over fear is really, really simple. This is what we call trampling the terror barrier, which is coming up in our mindset components of your participants guide. So you must understand that ignorance, when you're dealing with ignorance, the lack of knowledge or the lack of understanding or the unknown, what that does is in your mind, on your conscious mind, it sets in worry and doubt. Okay, worry and doubt. Worry and doubt, when impressed upon the subconscious mind repeatedly over and over, creates fear. Okay, fear then is impressed upon the body and is acted upon the body as anxiety. Okay, and that's why you're asking this question, because it makes you anxious in the morning when you watch that weight go up or down or whatever it's doing. It's creating anxiety. So again, how do you beat that ignorance? With knowledge. Okay, and with knowledge, and that's partially study, which is what you guys are doing right now within the Quantum Leap, is you are studying yourselves in the mindset portion. You are studying nutrition inside of the nutritional components of it. So you are working hard to increase your knowledge. With knowledge and study becomes understanding. Understanding is also mixed with faith, and faith then, when impressed upon the body, becomes well-being. Okay, so that's a little bit of a deeper one. We do cover this later in the mindset stuff, but you have to create well-being and satisfaction with regard to those numbers on your scale through only knowledge and understanding and study. Okay. And then once you know why those reasons or why that weight is fluctuating and the reasons that that happens, there's nothing to worry about. The anxiety that your body is feeling that is being created by the fear in your mind can then be overcome. Okay. I hope that makes sense. So again, just understand why weight would change from day to day. Okay. And then realize that it's completely natural, completely normal. And then as you start to link those changes with food choices you've been making and different things like that, you will also start to know why. And you'll also be able to predict when they come up and down. Okay. So there you go. There's your answer on that one. Next question. How do I break the trend of emotional eating? That's a good one. Okay. How do I break emotional eating patterns or habits? Now, I think the most important thing to remember here is that emotional eating is a habit. It's a habit. So very similar to our ignorance and our knowledge that we discussed a little bit earlier, just a second ago, this now comes back to goals. Okay. It comes back to goals, understanding and creating and swapping a bad habit for a good habit, closing that knowing doing gap. You now know as part of your gap that inside of there lives emotional eating. So you go find extra calories, extra foods, the foods you don't want to eat or whatever it might be. They are in that gap of things that you know you should not be doing. So now take the steps, go back to your chapters on habits and start rewriting these habits with the mindset of emotional eating. Come up with something that can replace the emotional eating, which is a bad habit, replace it with a good habit, whatever that might be. That could be meal prepping, reading a book, going for a walk, calling a friend, whatever that is. It doesn't matter. Find something that can replace that shitty habit with something that's a good and positive habit that moves you forward. Go back to your goal card. You have a goal card on you. Read it. It's there for a reason. You should be reading these on a daily basis. Okay. I write my goal cards over and over and over again. Okay. I have a goal. It's on here. That way I can always come back to it. I keep one on my wallet, one on my car, one on my desk right here. That way I'm always in tune to what my goal is. That way at the top of my mind and pressing upon my subconscious mind is the desire of what I wish to achieve. And in this case, it's not emotional eating. So for you, you've got to bring that forefront, bring it to the forefront of your mind, what you want to do, how you're going to do it, and then start applying it. Okay, there's no way around this. You can't beat this. You must apply the principles that you've been learning within the mindset portion. Go back and review your habits section and start to rewrite out and reword and rethink through your emotional eating habits that you're having right now and replace those habits with good ones. Okay. All right. Moving on. That felt really powerful. That felt kind of felt like I got kind of worked up there for a bit. All right, that was good. Okay, now next one. What are smart snack choices before bed? Okay, another good one. Okay, so eating before bed. Now, this is a long one. I'm a firm believer, whether this is scientifically accurate or not from a term perspective, which, by the way, it's not. I believe there are yin and there are yang foods. Okay, now, just to be clear, yin, it would be the calming relaxation and kind of anti-anxiety kind of portion of the world, and in this case food. And then you have the yang, the energy side of things, the higher flow, the more high vibration, I think would be a good way to put it, foods or thoughts or ideas. Okay, so you have yin and you have the yang. Now, some foods, if you kind of break them down, certain foods would be considered yin in the way that they would interact with maybe hormones or within your body. So as an example, like things that would be precursors to melatonin or the production of serotonin, or foods that induce certain kind of hormonal levels that are precursors to those kinds of things, are going to always fall onto the yin side of things. Whereas yang, in my opinion, would be like things like sugary foods, hyper palatable foods, foods that are hard to digest and take a long time to digest can sometimes be considered yang foods. Okay, so before bed, you want to be focused more on the yin style of foods, things that can control and manage your energy levels, but also induce sleepiness, if you will. Okay. So I'm going to link an article here. And this article, I'm just looking at it right now, is an article from my old coach, Charles Poliquin, the strength sensei. Now, this is from the Poliquin group. I'll link in the email. You'll see the link, of course. And it talks about all kinds of foods that regulate your circadian rhythm or better energy throughout the day and deeper sleep at night. So certain foods, it has a very brief outline as to why some of these foods might be of use. So as an example, tart cherry juice is a fantastic one because the phytochemicals raise and help to produce melatonin, which we know also can help you sleep. Almonds and walnuts, going back to seeds and nuts, are also another food that can help boost melatonin. Chamomile tea, of course, is relaxing. It's a yin style tea, whereas, say, green tea could be a yang style tea. You have all kinds of different foods that you can think of here. Salmon, because the omega-3 fatty acids can improve serotonin release, as well as provide vitamin D, which is going to be useful for sleeping as a sleeping aid. And then you have different foods that have levels of tryptophan or magnesium, which have always been considered to be some form of yin micronutrients. Okay. So pumpkin seeds, garbanzo seeds, different things are garbanzo beans, sorry, can be things that can have higher levels of tryptophan. Now, of course, as soon as I say tryptophan, everyone thinks about turkey dinner, right? High tryptophan always makes you want to go to sleep. Well, that's partially true, but there's two things I think that are more important there when it comes to thinking about your Thanksgiving meal is, yes, turkey, chicken, and many other foods are high in tryptophan, which are in most sleep aids. So there is some truth to the fact that that can potentially aid your sleep or your melatonin production or your serotonin production. So those are all good things. But realistically, one of the things that really helps with serotonin release is carbohydrates. So if you think about your Thanksgiving meal, it's not the turkey that wants to put you to sleep. It's the copious amounts of potatoes and all the other stuff that you have, pierogies, cabbage rolls that are in that meal that will produce sleepiness or will produce that onset of sleepiness. Okay. So the management of insulin, things like that. So traditionally, what we would recommend is that you offload your carbohydrates to later in the day, but you stick your carbohydrates to whole food sources. I'm not talking about gummy bears or simple sugars, donuts, things like that. What I'm talking about are, the classic term would be paleo carbohydrates, sweet potatoes, and any kind of tubers and things like that. Those would be the ideal sources of carbohydrates that you could add to your last meal or your last snack of the day to assist with your sleeping patterns. Okay. And I don't think you guys have received this yet, but the sleeping guidelines as well. So when we get into sleeping guidelines, which is a little bit different than this question, but it's linked because we're talking about bedtime. Another one would be to avoid alcohol. Alcohol is one of those things that I don't care how many times I try and tell my dad alcohol is not a sleep aid. He still thinks it is, but then he complains that he wakes up in the middle of the night. Alcohol in many cases can help you to feel kind of relaxed and go to sleep. But then the problem is it creates an issue midnight, which traditionally means you're going to be getting up throughout the night. So it's not an ideal sleep aid by any means. So the best sources would be to actually have a slightly higher carbohydrate meal. And the link that I have in there has some choices, some different food choices that might work. But again, stick to your paleo-based carbohydrates, your starchy carbohydrates from that side of things. And what it does is allows more so the release, like I said, of serotonin, and also manages some of your insulin levels as well, which can help blood pressure and sleep aids. Okay, so that would be my recommendation for what to choose for your late night snacks or your last meal of the day, is just simply shift some of the carbohydrates to late in the day to assist in your sleeping. Okay, all right. I feel like I'm talking very fast. I'm sorry. Okay, next one. How do I know if I'm falling behind on my goals? How do I stay accountable on the mindset component? Now, this is maybe a two-phase question because there's another one that says daily reflections. How can I be accountable to my goals and my mindset training? So kind of sounds like a similar question. Now, this one we could go on for a couple hours on, but we're not. How do you know if you're falling behind in your goals? I think my most appropriate answer is to be like, do you feel like you're falling behind in your goals? Because if you are, you are. Okay, because the mindset component of things is all about the mind. It's about the mindset. It's not something I can track. I can't track it like I can track your weight loss. Now we know where you should be at in your weight loss. So from the standpoint of goal of percentage of body fat or weight loss that you've achieved, that's easy to track because it's in your nutritional audit. It says how much weight you should lose every week. So you could calculate out where you should be or where you would like to be at this point in time. So that's just mathematics and equations. Okay. Now, of course, there's ups and downs as to why you may not be where you want to be right now. And I understand that, but it's still a mathematical equation. So that's how you can tell if you're behind on your actual physiological weight loss goals. But if you're talking about your mindset, it's a little bit harder to say, are you falling behind? I would argue that if you're asking the question, you probably are, because mindset is in fact a mindset. Okay. What we're trying to do is put you in the mind, in the thought processing that continues to motivate you to stay on track for your goals. So are you motivated on path to achieving what you want to achieve? And there's always ups and downs on this, but you should constantly be moving in this direction to staying on task. So are you doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing? Are you reading this every single day as often as you can? Are you reading, writing, going through and rewording all the work that you're doing? Okay. Another method, and I'll send this to you guys, is something that you guys can use. Okay. I don't know if you can see that in the light. My daily action planner, a powerful daily planner to make your, what the hell does that say? To maximize your day and achieve your goals. Sorry, I can't read it backwards. Okay. So this is actually my personal daily action planner. So this is something I created and I will send to you. I hope that this can actually help. So when you print this off, I happen to have it printed off. I went to Staples and had it bound. Okay. So I have it printed off for myself. And I go through here every single day. I have this set out on my calendar or on the counter in the morning. And I just mark it off with my favorite pen because I like to write with my favorite pen. So you can see what I have been writing in here. Okay. I hope that kind of comes through, but so I'll quickly go over what's on here. So when you first go into your actually, let me start the start of this. This will make more sense. Okay. So when you go through here, it's got name, contact information if found, if you lost, take action, a little bit of kind of a motivational paragraph or quote on how to use this. The next few pages talk about how to use this action planner on a weekly basis as well as a daily basis. So we have weekly and daily tracking within this, and there's multiple things that go inside of that. So when I get this printed out, the document that you're going to have will only have this weekly review only once, but I have it written out and tracked for as many weeks as I want. So when you do get it printed, you have to make sure you want to print it for, say, 4 weeks. Well, then you need 4 of these pages printed. Okay. So I just go in there, say, this is how many pages I want printed of these pages, and they put it together for me and it's done. Okay. So I have every week I review what are my weekly action plans. Okay. So what do I have to do this week? Okay. So what do I have to do? And inside of that, I mark off, different things I've achieved, what I want to do. I have some, PowerPoint presentations, some videos I have to do, some tasks, some phone calls, meetings, all that kind of stuff. And then I write a weekly commitment down the bottom. So it just simply says, I, Chad Banco, am committed to taking the following action steps this week, whatever that is. So what is the most important thing that I need to get done this week? I write it down in there and then I sign the bottom of the page. Okay, so I'm making a contract, a commitment to myself that this is what I want to achieve. On the other side of this page is then the weekly review, which apparently I didn't do on this week, but so a weekly review. So then I would do this one on Sunday evening and this on Sunday evening as well. So then I review my previous week and I have a reflection, lessons learned, memorable moments, highs and lows for the week. So it's just a time for me to reflect upon how the week went and what I did well, what I did not do well, how I can improve upon it. So then the next question on here goes, how will I ensure the next week is better than the last? Okay, so how can I make my next week better than the last? That's something that you guys can come up with on your own. So now note any actions that may be useful to improve for next week. It may be helpful to consider the following areas of life: mindfulness, finances, relationships, work, health, and wealth. Now, this was clearly not designed specifically for weight loss or nutrition. Okay, so this is something that you guys would use just in life in general, but you can tweak this however you want. So at the start of the week, you would do a reflection and an action plan. Okay, so that's the first one. And I print out, I think, 7 weeks at a time. So because I have that, I have 7 weeks of my daily action planner. Then I go and I print off multiple pages of the self-confidence formula, which is straight from Bob Proctor. It's a 1-page thing that I read every single morning and sign the bottom. Okay, so it's a contract again with yourself, and it's a 5-step contract. Okay. So I'm not going to read the whole thing because it takes a couple minutes. Okay. But then I dated at the bottom, put my name and sign it. It's a contract that I made with myself that today is going to be a great day. Then my next step, I go through the daily action planner. So I mark off the day, however many hours of sleep, and there's a little indicator that you can color off as to what hours you fell asleep and when you went to, or when you got up in the morning. And I found this one to be incredibly useful because what this one does, it keeps me in track. Because one of my biggest faults is that I want to stay up late at night. I work a lot of hours. So usually I'm up in the morning with the kids, anywhere between 5:30, 6:30, get them ready to school, take them to school. Then I come home, I work from home in the morning, and then I work at the gym traditionally till anywhere between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock is when I usually get home. So at that point, I'm kind of wound up. I'm a little tired. I want to go to bed, but I'm always like, hey, what's going on? What's going on in the world? So I usually catch up on the news or whatever else, but I can go down a very quick rabbit hole in my YouTube and different things like that. So I have to keep myself in line not to do so. So I have some basic rules at night that I try and attain to. That means don't watch too much TV, don't watch too much YouTube or whatever it is. So, but when I'm starting noting that over time, I'll just shift this way. I start going to bed later, getting up a little bit later, or feeling a lot more tired. And there's a line underneath it, which I can make notes on as to how I felt or what quality of sleep, which usually in my case is like kids were up all goddamn night. Okay. Something like that. That's usually what's in there. Then the next question that's in here is things I'm most grateful for. Now, this could be as small or as big as possible. You don't have to think on it. People get caught up in this stuff like, oh, I'm really grateful for whatever else. It could simply be the weather today was fantastic and I got out and saw some sun. Good, because I don't see a lot of that. I'm always stuck in my garage, in my work desk, or at the gym. I'm very rarely outside. So in that case, it's really nice to see some sun. So it could just be like, number one, I got outside, got some sun, got some vitamin D. So you have 3 things that you're grateful for. And that could be from anything as little as a hug from my daughter to as big as I don't know what, something that you achieved, doesn't matter, but what are you grateful for today? Okay. And also I like to fill this out in the morning or the evening. It's up to you, but usually I find it really helpful before bed because that way I'm going to bed in a positive mindset. I feel good. I can definitely sleep a little bit better. Next thing you write out is your goal. Okay, so what is my goal? Now I try to write this out a slightly different version than I write out this one. Okay, so when I write my goal card, that one's specific to what I want to achieve in a big picture, and I have some motivational quotes on here. This one is always towards it, but I like writing it differently every single day. So I write out my goal on here. The next one thing is the one thing. Okay, so the one thing was a priority task. So now it's a list of things I need to do today. Okay, I have my weekly reflection, my action items I did on Sunday, but now I can go back and say, what do I have to get accomplished today or tomorrow if I'm getting up? What is the one thing that is most important? And if you think about this, if you ever read the book, The One Thing, which is where I got that from, it's one of my favorite workbooks. And essentially, it comes down to this. The whole book is about a sentence, really. It's like, what if you could accomplish just one, your number one priority every single day, just do that one thing and nothing else. And you did your one priority every day, right? So you had a task to do. You'd be amazed in 365 days how far along you got on the things that you accomplished. So I always write down the one thing. What's the one thing I need to do tomorrow, no matter what? And then I write the next 3 top tasks, the things that I would like to get done. Then after that, what am I most proud of today? Then after that, things I could have done better today. So this is part of the daily reflection. Most of the time for me, this has everything to do with personal interactions with people. Okay. So usually it's like, a conversation I had or wording I may have used on something. I don't know, whatever it might be, but you can write that out. Then this one came from my mentor, Charles Poliquin. What did I learn today? I always thought this was great because when you take time to reflect upon the one thing that you learned, it then sticks with you a little bit longer. At least that's what I found. So the one thing that I learned. So on this random day, rib cage control in the squat is imperative for better performance and outcomes. I was utilizing breathing techniques to play with and help me understand rib cage positioning. It mattered to me and part of my human movement stuff, right? But that was I had some form of awakening that day on rib cage positions to squatting. So that's what I wrote what I learned that day. And then I write a daily affirmation. So every day I write out an affirmation as to like what I want to achieve. So it usually always goes, I am so happy and grateful that. And that's what you guys have been doing inside of your mindset components is I am so happy and grateful that. And actually, this is funny. I'm looking back in whatever date this was, that I have finished the Quantum Leap first draft and left on my desk for review. So there we go. So at that point in time, I was finishing up my mindset draft for the Quantum Leap. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so I will send you guys this document, but remember, you're going to have to print it out. If you want it printed out, you can do it electronically if you want, but if you want it printed out, you're going to have to take it to a store or whatever else you want to do and get it bound. They're not always the cheapest to do, but I find it very valuable and useful. So it's yours. You guys can play with it. I hope it's helpful. Okay. And I think to some degree that'll go back, because I got off track there, as to keeping you on track to your goals and what you want to achieve. So to help you maintain the mindset component of things. Okay. Or at least on the goals. Now, with regard to, and that's part of the daily reflection, I guess, is part of that question I had in daily reflections. What can I do from a daily reflection perspective? So that's where that was coming from. Now, the other side of that is like, how do I maintain my accountability and my mindset? Keep studying it. Keep studying it. Okay. Go back and read it and read it and read it. I can't overemphasize this enough. This is a document that I have from my coach many years ago. This is Bob Proctor, who just passed away a couple of weeks ago. His documentation that he had provided me with regard to my participant's guide and mindset. I have done this goddamn thing a million times. Okay. The videos that he has sent and done, I have done them 1,000 times. Here's another book. Okay. These are constant reviews for me at all times. Here's another coach I work with, a very good friend of mine, amazing, Dave Conway. Here's his workbook. This is on my desk at all times. So I study and I review this. Okay. So this is something, if you want to stay accountable, but stay on track with all of this stuff, what you need to do is you need to set aside time to make it a priority in your life. Okay. I truly believe that is the answer to this. You need to set aside time to make it a priority and study it. What you're doing is studying yourself. You're studying you, the most important person in the goddamn world, you. Okay. You're studying you. So stay on task. Okay. Keep that as something that you're going to do on a daily basis. All right. And again, if you have a more specific question on that, feel free to add it in. All right. Now, the last question. I think this is the last question. Yes, last question. Pros and cons of intermittent fasting. Okay. We could go for a while on this one. So I'm going to try and do it really simple. I don't have any notes on this, so I'm just going to wing this a little bit. Okay, so intermittent fasting. Let's clarify what intermittent fasting is first. Now, I think it's probably better termed. It's a popular term, intermittent fasting or IF. But I think really it's time restricted eating is a better one, because fasting links into like different ideas of daily, weekly, 3-day, 10-day. There's all kinds of actual fasts. Intermittent fasting is taking and removing 1 to 2 meals a day and eating within a timed block within your 24-hour period. That's probably the easiest way to explain intermittent fasting if you're unfamiliar. So the most common methods of doing intermittent fasting is having a break between fasting as low as 10 hours up to 20 hours. And the average for most people is between 12 and 20. And the more extreme ones being, actually, I should say the average is 12 to 16. And the more extreme ones would be a 20-hour fast. Now, I think to some degree, I have done every single one of these in different variations, and I have my personal take on these, how they work for me. So I'll start there. When I did a 20-hour fast and only had a 4-hour eating window, I found it very hard to hit my macronutrient numbers with regard to protein. Calories, not so hard, but protein I found very hard because I'm eating essentially 2 meals in 2 hours apart, give or take, maybe 3 hours apart. And I have to try and get in 250 grams of protein. That was a little tough, and it was hard to digest, and I just felt heavy. I felt bloated, and I found it just very, very difficult to do. When I moved to a 16-hour fast, that was much more enjoyable and something I actually, I don't want to say recommend, but I really enjoyed it. One of the things that I found with intermittent fasting is really great mental clarity. Now, why that was, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if that has something to do with the ketone bodies or whatever I'd be functioning on when I'm fasting. I don't really know, but I did find it to be very, very good for workflow, mental clarity. But the other side of it is I found it nearly impossible to work out on because my workout schedule isn't consistent. I don't have a very good workout time that I have built in. Mine bases around the clients I work with and my day's flow and the kids. So I might be working out early morning. I might be working out at 9 at night. I might be working out all over the place. So because of that, I found it very, very difficult to have a block time of eating. Now, I know a lot of people work out while they're fasted, but I also don't think that's an amazing route to take. So that would be one of the cons of intermittent fasting, is that if you're just intermittent fasting, what I've seen and heard and kind of in conversation and not necessarily research, but is that it's a great way to lose a bit of muscle mass as well as potential fat mass. Now, when you lose fat mass with intermittent fasting, again, all you have is caloric restriction. You can't get around this. This is still an energy deficit situation. So what most people do when they say, oh, I didn't track calories and I lost weight in intermittent fasting, again, you took out 1 to 2 meals a day and you just took in less total food. So you may have lost weight. So it may have worked for them. Fine. But again, it still comes down to it's a caloric deficit that they were in, because the basic rule of weight loss is you can't lose weight if you're not in a caloric deficit. Doesn't matter if you eat it in a 2-hour block, a 12-hour block, or a 16-hour block. It makes no difference. Okay. So it comes down mostly to your schedule, how you would fit it into your life, and whether or not it's something that will work for you. But I think it's got more to do with your schedule and your style of eating and your preference than it is a benefit or a con to actual weight loss, because there's no difference that way. It's just, is it more comfortable for you to do? So as an example, I don't intermittent fast anymore. I'm not opposed to it. My wife does. She does intermittent fast. She doesn't eat until probably about 2 o'clock, and then she'll only eat from 2 to maybe like 7 o'clock. So she has a 5-hour window in the 24 hours. So she's fasting between 18 and 20 hours a day. Didn't work for me, which works for her, totally fine. She seems to make it work around the kids' activities, her work schedule. But again, one of the places that she struggles is with timing exercise with it. Okay. Then other things, I think there's a little bit of research on like blood sugar control, insulin levels, insulin sensitivity being improved with intermittent fasting, which I think probably could definitely be the case. I think that has more to do with the food choices you're taking in as well, and the quality of the food you're taking in. That's a big one. But fasting has seemingly proven to be better for insulin sensitivity. So if you have diabetic issues or pre-diabetes, intermittent fasting could be a benefit. But again, I have to kind of warn you here, though, is if you're not going to be eating for a long time and you have blood sugar irregulations, you might want to talk to your doctor about that one before jumping on, okay? Because that's maybe going to be a quick jump, or start with a very small fasting period and then build up from there, okay? For a lot of people that really hate eating breakfast, you just skip breakfast and eat at lunch, you're intermittent fasting, I suppose. So you might be an intermittent faster just naturally. Other pros, it's easy, it's simple. It doesn't take, it's not a dietary approach that requires you to, avoid certain foods like maybe paleo or keto or things like that. It's you can still be flexible with your dieting. You can follow all the Quantum Leap rules and still intermittent fast. You're just changing your meal timing. But if you think of a pyramid of importance with regard to what the foundation of the pyramid is, it's calories, right? It's calories. Then the next step up is food quality or whole food choices. The next food up is then timing of meals, which then is where intermittent fasting falls. So it's kind of on the middle of the pyramid. It's not the base, the foundation. So I want to make sure that you understand that if you do enjoy intermittent fasting, do it. If you're wondering if it's good for fat loss, there is no research or benefits to intermittent fasting over just a basic caloric restriction when it comes to weight loss. There's no benefit there. Okay. So if you're looking for a magic pill with intermittent fasting, this ain't it. Okay. But if it works well in your schedule and it makes you adhere to your dietary choices easier, great, go for it, man. It's totally fine. I have no issues with it. As long as you can time it with your exercise. The last thing I would say is that you have to make sure, and I think this is from Peter Attia, which is another good guy to follow. He's a fasting guy. He used to be a keto guy. He's not anymore, but Peter Attia is a doctor. He has some great work on longevity. So if you want to find someone to track, he'd be a good one. He's been on Joe Rogan, been on Tim Ferriss, and he has his own podcast, which I can't remember the damn name of it now. Sorry, I can't remember the name of it. But Peter Attia, Dr. Peter Attia, Attia. So if you want information on intermittent fasting, he would be a good guy to chat or to go watch some videos or review and learn from. One of the things that he really mentioned, though, is that if you're intermittent fasting, you've got to strength train. Okay, because what he found is that in his clients that he works with is that most people that intermittent fast for a long period of time and didn't strength train lost too much muscle mass. Okay. And that was a major concern for longevity, health, and wellness, as well as your metabolic functioning. So you don't want to be losing muscle mass while you're making your choices on food. So in that case, I'd say make sure you're training properly. He does some protocols with his training, which I think are really smart. But he does fasted strength training as well. So again, something you can look into. I think with a lot of this stuff, there's no right or wrong. It's just simply, does it work for you? Does it fit into your lifestyle, your ideas of how you want to eat and play? What kind of gets you going? They're all acceptable choices, but I just need to reiterate again, there's nothing magical about it, and there's nothing special about it that makes it different than basic caloric deficit. Okay, there's no value up or down of it, but yeah, we'll leave it there. I think we'll leave it there. Now, again, if you have questions specific to intermittent fasting, something really specific, please feel free to ask it. Then I can go research that one, right? But generally speaking, I have no problem with it. I'm not for it. I'm not against it. It just, if it works for you, it works for you. Okay. So that would be my take on intermittent fasting. All right. I think I've gotten through all my stuff. I probably wasted an hour of your time now, so I should get going. So I'll leave it there, team. And you guys have a lovely week. I'll be back in touch with you guys very shortly in the next couple of days with some mindset training and some nutrition stuff. Okay. So there are your questions and answers. Please fire off some more questions to me, and let's keep this train a rolling, team. Let's have a fun week. See you soon.